Hi, welcome to Last Day on Earth. Where are you listening from tonight? And what time is it for you? Imagine this. Every breath you take is twice as rich in oxygen. The air feels heavy, almost intoxicating. Insects grow the size of birds. Reptiles glitter with mirrored scales. And forests ignite in firestorms that sweep continents in hours. It is a world of giants, a world of flames, a world where survival means adapting faster than collapse. Together, over 16 chapters, we'll explore how life might have evolved on an Earth with 50% oxygen. We'll walk through forests of monsters, dive into oceans of refuge, see how humans would live shorter, faster lives, and ask what lessons such a world could teach us about our own. So settle in somewhere quiet. Let the noise of today fade, and let's step into a world where even the air itself is both gift and threat. Chapter 1. The Age of Giants. Take a slow breath with me. Imagine that the air around you is not the 21% oxygen we know today, but half oxygen, half something else. Every inhalation floods your body with a surge of energy, like a fire in your lungs, fueling every cell at a speed our biology cannot truly handle. The atmosphere itself is alive with potential. In such a world, life does not remain small. It stretches, expands, and evolves into forms that would seem monstrous to us. This is the Earth of 50% oxygen, a planet where insects, amphibians, and even the ocean's dwellers have taken paths that our own history never permitted. The first creatures to seize this opportunity are the insects. On our Earth, they have always been bound by their breathing system. Unlike us, they have no lungs, no pumping heart to deliver oxygen through blood. Instead, they rely on networks of fine tubes, trachea, that allow oxygen to diffuse directly into their tissues. In our oxygen-light world, this diffusion limits them. It keeps them small. It is the invisible ceiling that holds them in the world of the miniature. But here, with half the atmosphere made of oxygen, that ceiling vanishes. The smallest designs of nature suddenly find themselves with the fuel to grow into titans. Look up. A dragonfly hovers overhead, not the fragile insect of ponds and reeds, but a predator with wings stretching 3 full meters across. Its body gleams in the sunlight, armored in iridescent plates, and its multifaceted eyes are the size of dinner plates, each one capable of locking onto prey with terrifying accuracy. A single beat of its wings stirs the trees below. Where in our world a dragonfly hunts mosquitoes, here it hunts mammals, a rabbit, a fox. Even an unprotected human child could become a target. Its jaws click together with a sound like snapping branches. On the forest floor, another ruler moves. Beetles, but not as we know them. Their shells are no longer tiny armors but gleaming black shields, each plate thick as steel. Some grow as heavy as wolves. When they spread their wings to take flight, the ground vibrates with the thunder of chitons striking air. They are tanks, rolling across the ecosystem, unstoppable, unless confronted by something even larger. They dig into tree trunks, boring tunnels wide enough for small animals to shelter in. But these tunnels are not safe. The beetles may return, and when they do, the intruders are crushed. And then there are the millipedes. In our Carboniferous past, oxygen levels at 35% allowed them to grow 2 meters long. Imagine what 50% does. 5 meters. 6. A train of armored segments winding silently through the undergrowth. Their many legs ripple in unison, carrying them forward with unnerving smoothness. They are detritivores, eaters of the dead and decaying. But in this world, their appetite extends beyond fallen leaves. They strip bark from trees, chew through soft animal tissue, and scavenge corpses in minutes. Encountering one in the forest is like facing a living conveyor belt of hunger. The dominance of these insects reshapes everything else. In our world, birds rose to fill the skies, feeding on insects. Here, the skies are already claimed. No feathered creature can compete with a dragonfly the size of a hawk or a wasp that weighs more than a dog. Birds may never evolve into forms that dominate ecosystems. They remain small, elusive, hiding in shadows, feeding on scraps that giants overlook. Mammals face a different struggle. Insects outcompete them at small sizes, and reptiles and amphibians, which thrive in oxygen-rich blood, push them back at larger scales. The classic mammalian advantage, being warm-blooded, loses some of its edge. When oxygen is abundant, cold-blooded creatures can move with speed and endurance once reserved for us. Mammals adapt, but their evolutionary story is delayed, twisted into unfamiliar paths. Yet gigantism is not just a gift, it is also a burden. With so much oxygen, insect metabolisms burn hotter. They consume resources at staggering rates. Dragonflies empty lakes of small fish. Beetles strip entire forests of their leaves. Millipedes devour layers of detritus that once fed soils. Their hunger is relentless. In many ways, these creatures are like living wildfires, sweeping through landscapes, leaving emptiness behind. Populations rise explosively, then crash in famine. The balance of ecosystems teeters constantly, more unstable than in our Earth. Picture yourself walking here. The air is heavy, damp with oxygen. Every sound is sharper, carried farther. The forest is not quiet. It hums and clicks, a constant chorus of wings and legs. Above, shadows cross the sun as dragonflies patrol. Around your feet, beetles clash like armored knights, their mandibles striking together with metallic force. You tread carefully, knowing that each step could disturb something far larger than you. Survival here is not about skill or intelligence. It is about avoiding notice in a world where giants lurk at every level of life. But life always adapts. Some mammals evolve nocturnal habits, hiding in burrows by day and emerging when the giant insects rest. Birds adapt by becoming scavengers, feeding on the corpses of fallen giants. Even reptiles evolve strategies to coexist with their insect rivals, some growing thicker skins to resist bites, others developing venom potent enough to take down an armored beetle. It is an arms race, one accelerated by the abundance of oxygen. The forests themselves bear scars of this insect dominance. Trees evolve thicker bark to resist being stripped. Leaves grow bitter, laced with toxins that even giant beetles struggle to chew. Swamps become refuges, too wet for fire and too dense for flying predators. Insects thrive, but so do the plants that adapt against them. The battle between eater and eaten escalates, layer by layer across entire continents. And through it all, the scale of life grows beyond our comprehension. The dragonfly is no longer an insect. It is a raptor. The beetle is no longer a bug. It is a tank. The millipede is no longer a crawling nuisance. It is a force of nature. This is the age of giants, a time when the smallest blueprint of nature, the insect, expands into titanic forms. It is a reminder that oxygen, so simple and invisible to us, can rewrite the very shape of life, and this is only the first act. The insects dominate, but they are not alone. Waiting in the wings, or rather in the rivers and swamps, are reptiles and amphibians. Cold-blooded creatures with blood now rich in oxygen. Creatures that in our world rose to power once before, but here, in this world of 50% oxygen, may rise even higher. Chapter 2. Reptiles and Amphibians Reign. If the age of giants belongs first to the insects, it does not remain theirs forever. For all their size, their armored shells, and their swarming dominance, they still carry vulnerabilities. Fire scours them. Famines collapse their numbers. And while insects burn bright, feeding fast and dying quickly, other creatures rise more steadily in the background. The oxygen-rich air does not only supercharge trachea, it floods lungs and bloodstreams as well. And for cold-blooded animals, reptiles and amphibians, this oxygen-rich atmosphere becomes a new evolutionary gift. On our Earth, mammals eventually outcompeted reptiles by being warm-blooded. We regulate our own heat, keeping our bodies ready to run, chase, and endure even in cold conditions. Cold-blooded animals depend on the sun, warming themselves slowly on rocks before they can act with speed. But in a world of 50% oxygen, that disadvantage softens. Their blood, infused with oxygen, carries fuel at a rate that transforms their metabolism. Suddenly, reptiles and amphibians can run faster, stay active longer, and outlast many competitors. Endurance, once the mammalian advantage, is no longer exclusive. Picture a swamp, damp and steaming under heavy air. From the murk, an amphibian rises. Not the fragile frogs we know, but something larger, armored, and powerful. Oxygen fuels its muscles, allowing it to leap incredible distances, to lunge with bursts of speed that no mammal can match in this world. Amphibians, once bound to small streams and ponds, expand their domain. Their skin thickens against flames, their lungs adapt to both land and water, and their bodies grow in size until some rival crocodiles. These are not transitional creatures anymore. They are apex predators. Reptiles, too, find their moment. Lizards grow longer, heavier, and faster. Snakes, already masters of stealth, evolve into constrictors large enough to coil around giants. Imagine a python, not 3 meters long, but 20. Its muscles swelling with oxygenated blood. Its strike as fast as a mammal's sprint. It becomes a nightmare in the undergrowth, wrapping around beetles the size of wolves and crushing them with terrifying force. The rise of reptiles reshapes the balance. Where insects once filled every niche, they now find themselves prey. Dragonflies, mighty hunters in the skies, are plucked from the air by reptiles that leap from branches with claws extended. Millipedes, armored and immense, are ambushed by amphibians lurking in swamps, dragged underwater to drown in oxygen-rich currents. Even beetles, with their tank-like shells, find themselves vulnerable to venom. Reptiles evolve toxins so potent that a single bite can paralyze prey many times their size. This is the second act of life in a 50% oxygen world. Reptiles and amphibians stepping into power. And with oxygen as their ally, they evolve in directions unthinkable in our Earth's history. Let's imagine some of these creatures in detail. A vast lizard stalks the grasslands, its scales shimmering with colors that warn predators of its venom. Its lungs filled with oxygen, fuel not just endurance, but bursts of strength. When it runs, it does not tire quickly as lizards do in our world. It runs like a wolf, pacing itself across kilometers, hunting not in short ambushes but in drawn-out chases. Warm-bloodedness is no longer a necessity. Oxygen has rewritten the rules. In the rivers, salamander-like amphibians grow massive. Some stretch 12 meters, wide as a small boat, their heads flat, and their eyes peering just above the water's surface. They lunge upward with jaws that snap like traps, pulling prey down with a force magnified by muscles that never starve for oxygen. They thrive in swamps where fires cannot reach, becoming both hunters and guardians of their watery kingdoms. Even reptiles of the skies emerge. Insects once held the air, but reptiles are not passive. With abundant oxygen, gliding lizards transform. Their wing-like membranes extend further. Their muscles grow stronger, and eventually, they take to the air in sustained flight. Imagine creatures like flying dragons, not in myth but in biology. Their wingspans vast, their lungs pumping oxygen with each beat. Birds as we know them never rise here. Reptiles fill that role instead. For mammals, this is disastrous. Their evolutionary story is cut short. They remain small, hiding in burrows or emerging at night. Their warm-blooded advantage dulled by reptiles that can now do the same without the metabolic cost. The great rise of mammals, the age of lions and whales and humans, may never happen in this world. Instead, it is a reptilian Earth, swamps ruled by amphibian titans, skies patrolled by reptilian flyers, and forests stalked by venomous lizards with endurance and speed once unimaginable. But even here, the oxygen has a price. The very fuel that grants reptiles their power also threatens them. With more oxygen, tissues burn faster, metabolisms race hotter. Without adaptations, cells suffer damage, aging accelerates, and lifespans shorten. Reptiles evolve defenses, antioxidant-rich blood, skin layers that neutralize oxygen's bite, behaviors that keep them cool and away from flames. Yet these defenses are not perfect. Life burns brighter in this world, but often shorter. Evolution finds balance not in stability, but in cycles. Populations boom with oxygen, then collapse with age and fire, only to rise again. From the perspective of ecosystems, this world is in constant upheaval. Fire wipes out swathes of forest, and reptiles recolonize them quickly. Insects crash in famines, and amphibians surge to fill the space. Predators and prey alike live at extremes, bodies shaped not for subtlety, but for survival in an environment supercharged by oxygen. There are no half measures here. Either you adapt to abundance, or you vanish. Now picture standing at the edge of one of these swamps. The air is thick, heavy, almost intoxicating. Mist rises from the water, curling around reeds and massive ferns. Somewhere in the distance, wings beat slowly, reptilian flyers circling in search of prey. At the water's edge, ripples spread outward as something vast stirs beneath the surface, and then it rises, a head as wide as your chest, jaws opening in silence before slamming shut with the sound of splitting wood. A salamander the size of a crocodile, its body glistening in the swamp light, slides forward with unsettling grace. It does not hurry. In a world of endless oxygen, patience is no weakness. It has all the energy it needs, all the strength it requires, and the certainty that no mammal, no bird, no rival can truly threaten its reign. This is the earth of reptiles and amphibians, a world rewritten by air. They inherit the niches that mammals never claim, shaping evolution for millions of years. They are not the background creatures of our history, the ones pushed aside by warm-blooded rise. They are the dominant forms, the ones that thrive under the rule of oxygen. And yet, beyond the swamps and rivers, the story continues. For if the reptiles claim the land and the amphibians thrive in water, there remains another realm to conquer, the open seas. In a 50% oxygen world, the oceans themselves change, filling with fuel that supercharges life below the surface. Their predators wait to grow even larger, even deadlier than those on land. The reign of reptiles is only the middle chapter. The seas are about to awaken. Chapter 3. Predators of the sea. The land may belong to the insects, the swamps to the amphibians, and the forests to reptiles. But the seas, the vast, oxygen-rich oceans, are a world of their own. When the atmosphere holds 50% oxygen, it does not stop at the shoreline. Oxygen dissolves into water more readily, saturating rivers, lakes, and oceans with levels far beyond what we know today. And this, perhaps more than anywhere else, changes the rules of life. The oceans become a stage for monsters. In our world, the ocean already holds giants. Whales grow larger than any land creature. Squid reach out with arms like serpents, and sharks prowl the depths with ancient power. Yet all of these evolved under the constraints of our oxygen-light atmosphere. In a 50% oxygen Earth, the seas supercharge everything. Muscles pull harder, bodies grow larger, and predators reach terrifying extremes. Imagine diving into coastal waters. At first it feels familiar. Fish darting, corals swaying, the surface glimmering above. But then you notice the size. Schools of fish are not the small, flashing silvers of our world. Each one is a meter-long, moving in coordinated waves. Predatory fish, instead of being a few kilograms, weigh hundreds. Their teeth gleam in the filtered light, their eyes wide and alert. In this oxygen-rich ocean, even the smallest hunters grow large. And then deeper, you meet the true titans. Sharks, for example, evolve into apex predators beyond our comprehension. The great white shark in our world reaches 6 meters. In this world, with blood flooded with oxygen, they grow twice that size, maybe more. Imagine a shark 15 meters long, moving not with sluggish bulk, but with bursts of speed that seem impossible for something so vast. With each lunge, its gills pump water heavy with oxygen, fueling muscles that never tire. These sharks do not wait patiently for prey. They hunt actively, chasing even the fastest swimmers until they collapse in exhaustion. Squid too take advantage. Cephalopods are masters of oxygen transport. Their copper-based blood, already efficient in binding what little oxygen exists in today's seas, give them oceans saturated with oxygen, and they explode in size and complexity. Giant squids no longer hide in the depths, unseen by human eyes. They rise to the surface, their tentacles stretching 20 meters or more, eyes the size of shields. They hunt not just fish, but sharks, tangling them in sucker-lined arms, dragging them into dark water where beaks slice through flesh. Entire ecosystems reorganize around their presence. And yet, it is not only the predators that grow, herbivores too expand. Imagine herds of massive sea turtles grazing on kelp forests that stretch across entire coastlines. Their shells, broader than dining tables, gleam under the sun. They move slowly, but in this world, slowness is not weakness. Oxygen gives them endurance, allowing them to swim for days without rest, migrating across oceans like whales do in our timeline. Their grazing reshapes marine landscapes, carving clearings in kelp forests that become hunting grounds for predators lurking nearby. The deep ocean changes most of all. In our world, the abyss is dark, cold, and low in oxygen. Life there is often small, slow, adapted to scarcity. But in a 50% oxygen world, even the depths teem with fuel. Imagine colossal creatures drifting in darkness, jellyfish with bells 20 meters wide, pulsing with eerie light. Anglerfish larger than cars, their lures glowing like lanterns in the black. The deep sea is no longer a refuge of the small and strange. It is a realm of giants, predators and prey alike, reshaped by abundance. Coral reefs, too, become more extreme. With higher oxygen, corals grow faster, building vast undersea cities of stone and color. They rise taller, creating labyrinths where predators lurk and prey hides in endless games of survival. Reef fish grow larger, their colors brighter, their behaviors more aggressive. The reef is no longer a delicate balance of species. It is a battlefield, a clash of creatures fueled by a surplus of life's most vital element. For mammals, the oceans might have been a chance. In our history, whales and dolphins rose to dominance because their warm-blooded endurance let them outlast cold-blooded fish. But here, that advantage is erased. Fish, sharks, and reptiles all have oxygen-rich blood, moving with equal or greater stamina. Whales may never evolve, dolphins never sing. The ocean is not theirs to claim. Instead, reptiles adapt. Imagine marine reptiles descended from crocodile-like ancestors, growing vast and powerful. Their lungs draw oxygen from the atmosphere at the surface, fueling dives that last for hours. With strong tails, they chase prey across kilometers, rivaling even the largest sharks. But oxygen, as always, comes with danger. Fires cannot burn underwater, but oxygen still fuels reactions within cells. Marine creatures suffer oxidative stress, just as their land-based relatives do. Their lives may be shorter, their bodies more fragile with age. Many evolve natural antioxidants, chemical defenses in their blood that delay damage. Others reproduce quickly, ensuring survival through sheer numbers. The oceans do not grow calm or stable. They surge with cycles of bloom and collapse, predator booms followed by population crashes. Picture the scene. You are on a small raft, drifting above deep water. The air is heavy, rich, almost intoxicating to breathe. Below, the sea is not empty. Shadows circle beneath you, vast and silent. A fin cuts the surface, taller than your chest, and then another. A shark, 3 times the size of a bus, rises and slides beneath the raft, its eye rolling upward, unblinking and cold. And then from the depths, tentacles rise. A squid surfaces, its body gleaming wet in the sun, arms curling and unfurling with slow menace. The shark turns toward it, the two titans circling each other. You realize in that moment that the raft is not the center of the story. You are just another piece of flotsam, drifting in an ocean where the true rulers of Earth clash in battles unseen in our own history. In this oxygen-rich sea, the laws of scale collapse. The small become large, the large become immense, and the immense become terrifying. There is no quiet ocean here, no safe refuge for the weak. The seas belong to predators, each one larger, faster, and hungrier than anything our Earth ever produced. Life has reached its extremes, and in doing so it has written a new story for the oceans, one of abundance, of danger, and of endless, oxygen-fueled power. And yet, even as the oceans swell with titans, the land continues to change. Reptiles and amphibians rule the forests and swamps. Insects still dominate the skies in swarms, and mammals, small and hidden, struggle for their place. But in time, the story will turn to them. What becomes of mammals in this world? Can they ever rise, or are they forever overshadowed by the giants of oxygen? Chapter 4. The Fate of Mammals. For most of our Earth's history, mammals waited in the shadows. They were small, quick, and often nocturnal, living under the feet of the dinosaurs. Only when the great reptiles fell did mammals begin their ascent, eventually producing everything from whales to humans. But in a world with 50% oxygen, this story would never unfold the same way. Here, mammals face not only the towering insects of the skies and the amphibians of the swamps, but also reptiles that no longer suffer from their cold-blooded limits. The warm-blooded edge, the very trait that made mammals successful in our world, is muted. The oxygen itself rewrites the balance. To understand why, let's remember what makes mammals unique. Warm-bloodedness allows us to maintain body temperature independent of the environment. We can run long distances even when the air is cold. Our high metabolic rate fuels intelligence, endurance, and resilience. But that metabolic furnace is costly. It burns vast amounts of oxygen and food just to keep us stable. In a 21% oxygen world, this cost pays off. Cold-blooded reptiles tire quickly, while mammals keep going. But in a 50% oxygen atmosphere, reptiles and amphibians no longer tire in the same way. Their blood, rich in oxygen, delivers fuel as efficiently as mammalian blood. They can sprint, chase, and endure in ways they never could before. Suddenly, warm-bloodedness loses much of its advantage. Mammals remain high-energy creatures, but their uniqueness no longer defines them. So what becomes of them? At first, they survive in the shadows, just as they did under dinosaurs in our timeline. They carve out niches where giants cannot follow. Burrows, treetops, and nocturnal habits become their refuge. Insects, though titanic, rest in cooler nights. Amphibians return to their swamps. Mammals emerge under the stars, scavenging and foraging, surviving where others sleep. Yet even this role is fragile. In a hyperoxygen world, nights are not always safe. Fires sparked by lightning continue even under darkness. Predators with venom or heightened senses prowl at all hours. Survival is harder, the margins thinner, but mammals adapt. Evolution never stops, even in the most hostile settings. Some shrink, becoming fast-breeding, mouse-like creatures that endure through numbers. Others grow tougher, evolving thicker skins, sharper senses, and greater agility. Many rely on intelligence, not yet human, not yet civilization, but cleverness all the same. They learn to raid insect nests, to steal eggs from reptiles, to navigate fires by following winds. Mammals, in this timeline, may become the tricksters of the ecosystem, never dominant, but always persistent. Yet the oxygen-rich environment shapes them in subtler ways too. With so much oxygen available, mammals burn hotter. Their bodies run even faster than ours do, their hearts racing with energy. This brings power, but also fragility. Oxygen as fuel, damages tissues. Without constant defenses, mammals age quickly. Their lifespans shorten, perhaps only a few years, unless they evolve biological shields against oxidative stress. Evolution experiments here, producing mammals with antioxidant-rich blood, tissues that repair more quickly, or even symbiotic bacteria that help neutralize oxygen's harmful byproducts. Survival is not just about speed, it's about resisting the very air they breathe. Now imagine a forest where reptiles hunt openly, insects rule the skies, and amphibians stalk rivers. In a hollow tree, a small mammal waits. It has large eyes, wide pupils to catch the faintest moonlight. Its fur is thin, because warmth is no longer its edge. Instead, its claws are sharp, perfect for climbing fast, escaping into branches where heavier predators cannot reach. Its nose twitches constantly, not just smelling food but sensing smoke, warning it of fire before flames arrive. This is a survivor's world, and mammals have become survivors above all else. But could mammals ever rise? Could they ever compete with giants in such a world? The answer may be no, not in the same way they did in our history. Without the advantage of warm-blooded endurance, they never dominate large-scale predation. The niches of apex predator belong to reptiles, amphibians, and ocean titans. The skies, once filled by birds, remain ruled by insects and reptilian flyers. Mammals never claim those thrones. Yet domination is not the only path. Mammals excel at flexibility, at exploiting what others overlook. They may not evolve lions or whales, but they could evolve into forms no less fascinating. Imagine burrowing mammals the size of dogs, armored with bony plates, to resist both predators and fire. Picture tree dwellers with gliding membranes, darting through canopies at night, small enough to evade dragonflies yet clever enough to raid their nests. Consider aquatic mammals that never become whales, but instead thrive in rivers and lakes, fast breeding in always shifting habitats when reptiles close in. And perhaps intelligence itself could still emerge. Oxygen fuels brains as well as muscles. If some mammal line finds safety long enough to grow larger brains, to coordinate in groups, to use tools, it could carve a foothold, even in this hostile Earth. The challenge would be fire. In our timeline, humans mastered fire as an ally, a way to cook food, ward off predators, and reshape landscapes. In a 50% oxygen world, fire is not ally, but enemy. One spark could ignite entire forests, villages, even civilizations. For mammals to rise as intelligent toolmakers, they would need to master not flame, but its avoidance, inventing paths of survival that steer around their planet's most constant threat. It is sobering to imagine, in this world, mammals are never kings. They are not lions on the savannah, or humans shaping continents. They are survivors, tricksters, scavengers, perhaps clever, perhaps even self-aware, but never dominant in the way we are. Evolution has favored others. Insects in their giant forms, reptiles with their oxygen-rich endurance, amphibians with their hybrid power, and ocean predators that grow into titans. Mammals are background actors in a drama written by air itself. And yet, if we step back, there is another way to view it. Perhaps the fate of mammals in this world is not tragedy, but balance. On our Earth, mammals rose so high that they reshaped the planet entirely. Here they remain humble, woven into the ecosystem without overwhelming it. They survive in small groups, always alert, always adjusting. In a way, they are closer to the rhythm of nature, living in cycles rather than rewriting them. So, what is the fate of mammals in a 50% oxygen world? It is not extinction, not irrelevance, but persistence without dominance. They survive, always clever, always cautious, but never giants. Their story is one of endurance, of living within limits rather than breaking them. It is a quieter story, perhaps, but no less remarkable. And yet we are left with a question. If mammals never rise as rulers, what happens to us? Would humans, as we know them, ever exist in this world? Could evolution still produce a species with intelligence, self-awareness, and the ability to wonder about oxygen, fire, and fate? Or would that destiny belong to something else entirely? To know that answer, we must imagine humans, or their equivalents, in a 50% oxygen Earth. Chapter 5. Humans in a 50% oxygen world. Let's imagine carefully that humans do emerge in a 50% oxygen Earth. Somehow, despite the dominance of insects, reptiles, and amphibians, and despite the constant threat of fire, evolution still carves out a path for us. We are here, breathing, walking, thinking, but we are not the same. Every detail of our biology, every habit of our culture, every step of our civilization is shaped by the air itself. Start with the breath. In our world, each lungful of air delivers just enough oxygen to fuel our cells, to keep our muscles alive, to feed our brains. But here, with every breath, our lungs absorb far more. The blood that flows from them is supercharged, each red blood cell binding oxygen in abundance. Our hearts pump faster, our muscles twitch stronger, our reactions sharpen. A sprint that would leave us gasping in our own world is sustained with ease. Even ordinary walking feels like a constant surge of energy. Humans in this world might grow taller, more muscular, their bodies designed to use the endless fuel of the atmosphere. But oxygen is not only fuel, it is also fire inside the body. It burns in cells, stripping electrons, creating reactive molecules that damage tissues. In our world, we manage this with antioxidants, with repairs built into our DNA. In a 50% oxygen world, the damage is constant. Every breath that fuels us also shortens us. Lifespans here would be shorter unless evolution adapts. Humans might rarely live beyond 30 or 40 years. Our skin would age faster, our organs wear down quickly. To survive, evolution would need to build us differently. Perhaps our blood would carry stronger antioxidants. Perhaps our cells would repair themselves at furious speed. Or perhaps culture would evolve around brevity. Life lived quickly, intensely, before the body fades. Now think about fire. For us, fire was a gift. It gave us warmth, cooked our food, shaped our tools, and eventually drove our industries. But in this world, fire is not ally, but enemy. At 50% oxygen, even a spark can turn into an inferno. A campfire could leap into a forest blaze. A torch could ignite an entire village. Fire is too dangerous to control. And so, the great turning point of our own evolution, mastery of flame, might never come. Humans here would need another path. Perhaps they would learn to cook with steam, boiling food in sealed containers. Perhaps they would harness geothermal heat from hot springs, or use chemical reactions that release warmth without flame. Their technology would be different, safer, shaped by fear as much as by invention. This changes everything. Without fire, metallurgy is difficult. Melting and shaping metals requires heat that is dangerous to summon. Stone tools may persist far longer. When metals are used, they might be gathered from meteorites or volcanic flows rather than forged in kilns. Civilization, as we know it, slows. Yet it does not stop. Humans are resourceful. They would find other ways, weaving, shaping stone, carving wood, building with bone. Perhaps their world is one of biotechnology, not machines but living materials grown and cultivated. A city might be made of hardened plant fibers, fireproof bark or coral-like structures, coaxed to grow in desired forms. But humans are not only tool makers, we are thinkers, organizers, storytellers. In a world of short lifespans, culture becomes even more important. Knowledge cannot be hoarded by individuals who live for decades. It must be passed quickly, carefully, from one generation to the next. Stories, rituals, and oral traditions become vital. Perhaps children learn survival skills, not slowly over years, but in a rush from birth to adolescence, because their parents will not live to guide them long. Entire civilizations could be built on compressed lifetimes, on the urgency of passing wisdom before it is lost. And then there is the matter of predators. On this earth, humans are not at the top of the food chain. Giant insects still patrol the skies. Amphibians lurk in swamps. Reptiles stalk forests with venom and endurance. Humans, small and soft-skinned, cannot fight them directly. Survival means communities built in safe zones, perhaps caves, perhaps swamps. Too wet for fire, perhaps islands surrounded by water. Weapons evolve not as tools of dominance, but as shields of defense. Spears tipped with stone, nets woven to entangle giant dragonflies, perhaps even poisons borrowed from plants. Every human innovation must answer the question, how do we live in a world filled with giants? But if humans are fragile, we are also clever. Intelligence is our true weapon. Even in this world, it could find a foothold. We might learn to track the habits of predators, to move in patterns that avoid their hunting grounds, to settle in places where fires do not rage as easily. We could develop collective strategies, entire groups working together, communicating, planning. Intelligence thrives in adversity, and adversity is everywhere here, yet intelligence is not inevitable. The constant dangers, the short lifespans, the fragility of fireless technology, these could prevent humans from ever reaching the complexity of civilization. Perhaps our kind never invents agriculture, never builds cities, never writes. We might remain nomads, moving carefully through forests, always alert, always watching the skies for wings. Our intelligence might remain at the level of survival, not empire. And still there is another possibility. The very abundance of oxygen that fuels predators also fuels our brains. The human brain is an oxygen-hungry organ, demanding a fifth of every breath. In this world, it is fed like never before. Thought is quicker, sharper, more intense. If evolution protects us from oxidative damage, we could become brilliant even with short lives. Imagine civilizations where people live only 30 years, but their minds burn with extraordinary clarity. They invent, create, and discover at a pace that makes up for brevity. Their cultures value not longevity but brilliance, a flash of genius before fading. Picture it, a human settlement in a world of 50% oxygen. The air feels heavy as you breathe, almost intoxicating. Houses are built low and strong, covered with fireproof clay or bark. Around the village, water channels encircle the fields, a defense against fire sweeping from forests. Children run quickly, faster than ours, their muscles fueled by endless oxygen. Elders, though only 40 years old, speak with the weight of experience, passing on lessons before their bodies fail. At night, families gather, not around fire but under stars, telling stories that bind them together. The predators are always near, the danger always real, but so is the resilience. These are humans not as masters of the planet, but as survivors in a world that never bends to their will. So what are humans in this oxygen world? Taller, stronger, but shorter lived. Smarter, perhaps, but always cautious. Fireless, yet inventive in new ways. Their civilizations are fragile, their survival never guaranteed, yet they endure, as mammals always do, by adapting, by finding niches where others cannot. It is a humbling picture. In our Earth, humans reshaped everything. In this Earth, we remain part of the weave, clever, resourceful, but never truly dominant. The air itself holds us in balance, giving us strength with one hand and taking it away with the other. And still, the question lingers, how long can such a balance last? Can humans, or any creature, survive in a world that burns so easily, that ages so quickly, that fuels giants at every corner? To answer, we must turn back to oxygen itself, not as a gift, not as a fuel, but as a danger. For in this world, every breath carries a price. Chapter 6. The Price of Too Much Oxygen. On our Earth, oxygen feels like life itself. Every breath is automatic, invisible, a background rhythm that keeps us alive. We rarely think of it as dangerous, yet oxygen is a double-edged element. It fuels fire, and inside our bodies, it fuels something similar, a cellular flame that powers every heartbeat, every thought. But just as fire consumes forests, oxygen also corrodes us from the inside. In a world where the atmosphere holds 50% oxygen, this danger is everywhere, unavoidable, and relentless. Let us begin at the smallest scale, the cell. In our world, when oxygen enters a cell, it flows into mitochondria, the tiny powerhouses where fuel is burned to release energy. Normally, this process is balanced. A little oxygen is consumed, and a little waste is produced. But even in our Earth, sometimes, this process leaks. Molecules called free radicals form unstable fragments of oxygen that lash out, damaging DNA, proteins, and membranes. Over time, they age us. They scar our tissues, weaken our muscles, and erode our brains. Antioxidants, whether produced in our bodies or eaten in plants, fight them back. But the war never ends. Now imagine that every breath carries not 21% oxygen, but 50%. The mitochondria are flooded, their furnaces burning hotter. Free radicals multiply, not in trickles, but in floods. Every cell becomes a battlefield of damage and repair. Muscles ache sooner, wounds heal slower, organs age faster, lifespans shorten. To survive in this world, every creature must evolve defenses stronger than anything we know. This is why insects, reptiles, and amphibians cannot simply grow larger without cost. Their size and power come with shortened lives. Giant dragonflies burn bright, their wings carrying them across forests with unmatched speed. But they die young, their tissues corroded by oxygen's fire. Amphibians leap and lunge with terrifying force, yet their skin cracks, their blood vessels weaken, their lives end abruptly. Even reptiles with their thick scales and venom cannot escape. The gift of oxygen is power, but its price is fragility. Evolution fights back. Creatures in this world develop extraordinary adaptations. Some evolve antioxidant-rich blood, molecules that scavenge free radicals before they do harm. Others grow tissues that renew constantly, replacing damaged cells at furious speed. Some even form symbiotic relationships with microbes that help manage oxidative stress, a living partnership against the poison of their own air. Still, no adaptation is perfect. Life in a 50% oxygen world is not about stability, but cycles. Growth, power, reproduction, collapse. The giants rise quickly, dominate for a time, then vanish, leaving space for the next, for humans, or any mammal that might emerge here. The challenge is even sharper. Our brains are gluttons for oxygen. They consume a fifth of every breath, fueling thought, memory, and imagination. In this world, those brains are flooded. They think faster, burn brighter, but also degrade more quickly. Memory may fade early. Minds may shine with brilliance at 20, then dim by 30. A culture here would be one of youth, where wisdom and leadership belong, not to elders, but to the young. We can imagine this shaping civilizations. In our world, traditions are carried by grandparents, passed through generations slowly. Here, they must be transmitted urgently. Every discovery, every lesson must be shared before age steals it away. Knowledge becomes a race against time. Perhaps entire communities gather nightly, repeating lessons in chants and songs, so no memory is lost when its bearer fades. Written language, if it emerges, is not a luxury but a necessity. The only way to preserve what minds cannot hold for long. Oxygen shapes the body in other ways too. Skin is not only protection from predators or weather. Here, it becomes a shield against oxygen itself. Many creatures evolve darker, thicker skins laced with protective compounds. Some secrete oils that neutralize free radicals on the surface. Others develop rapid cell turnover, shedding damaged layers like armor plates. For humans, this could mean skin that feels tougher, almost leathery, resistant not to claws, but to the invisible corrosion of the air. Even behavior is touched by oxygen's cost. In our world, some species live long, invest in few offspring, and nurture them carefully. Others live short, breed fast and rely on numbers. In this world, the second strategy dominates. When lifespans are brief, survival means reproducing quickly, spreading genes before oxygen tears bodies apart. Populations rise explosively, then fall in crashes. Forests echo with swarms, floods of young, waves of creatures that overwhelm ecosystems before vanishing. Humans, too, might follow this rhythm, having children early, raising them in communal groups, and passing on knowledge quickly before bodies fail. But oxygen is not only a danger inside bodies, it shapes the entire planet. Fires burn hotter, faster, more destructively. A fallen tree struck by lightning is not just a fire hazard, it becomes an inferno that leaps from forest to forest. Ecosystems adapt to this with thick-barked plants, swampy refuges, and fireproof strategies. Animals evolve behaviors to flee, burrow, or even exploit fire. Some species may synchronize reproduction with post-fire regrowth, timing their lives to the rhythm of destruction. Fire itself becomes part of evolution's toolkit, and here lies the paradox. Oxygen gives life its intensity, but it also ensures that no life can ever be permanent. Giants fall, predators weaken, species flourish, then vanish. Extinction is not an exception, but a rule. The world is always on the edge of collapse, yet always surging back with new forms. Life here is not a slow, steady climb, as it was in our world. It is a constant dance of brilliance and burnout. Now imagine walking through this earth. You see insects the size of hawks, reptiles with venomous fangs, amphibians lurking in swamps. They are immense, powerful, awe-inspiring. But look closer, and you see the cracks. Their skins scarred, their movements hurried, their lifespans fleeting. You realize that every creature you see is temporary, a flicker of abundance in an atmosphere too rich for stability. Even the mightiest predator is already aging, already burning out. For us, this is unsettling. We imagine evolution as a march toward stability, toward balance. But in a 50% oxygen world, stability is rare. Life is vivid but fragile, vast but brief. Perhaps this world never produces civilizations that last millennia, never builds empires or monuments. Its inhabitants live in cycles, fast, fierce, and fleeting. So what lesson does this oxygen world give us? That life is always shaped by balance. Too little oxygen, and complexity never rises. Too much, and it burns itself away. Our 21% is not an accident. It is a sweet spot, a narrow window, where endurance and intelligence can grow, where creatures live long enough to build, to learn, to remember. Our Earth is not only habitable but finely tuned, a balance between fuel and flame, and yet there is beauty in the oxygen world too. In its forests and oceans, life explodes in intensity, colors brighter, muscles stronger, creatures larger. It may not last as long, but it burns with a brilliance that our quieter Earth rarely knows. Perhaps that is its own kind of wonder, a world that teaches us that life can exist not only in balance, but also in extremes, where every breath is both a gift and a cost. Chapter 7. The Burning Earth. Every world has its rhythm. On our Earth, fire has always been part of that rhythm. Forests burn, grasslands flare, lightning strikes, and new growth follows. But those fires are bounded by our atmosphere, limited by the amount of oxygen the air can give. In a 21% oxygen world, fires can be fierce, but they do not consume everything. They stop at rivers, damp soil, or when fuel is gone. They are events, not constants. Now imagine a world with 50% oxygen. Here, fire is not just an occasional visitor. It is a force that shapes every inch of the planet. Flames ignite easily, spread quickly, and burn hotter than we can imagine. A spark is no longer a small hazard. It is the beginning of a catastrophe. Lightning strikes a tree, and within moments, the fire leaps from branch to branch, racing through the canopy. A fallen rock sparks against another, and the dry grassland becomes a sea of flame. Even the breath of a volcanic vent releasing sparks into the air, can set the horizon alight. In this world, fire is everywhere. It is not a background risk. It is the architect of landscapes. Forests cannot be as they are in our world. Trees that grow tall and dry become tinder waiting for destruction. Instead, the dominant vegetation is different. Swamps and wetlands expand, their waters creating natural fire breaks. Plants evolve thick, fireproof bark or tissues that store water, resisting ignition. Some even adapt to embrace fire. Their seeds germinate only after flames pass, ensuring that the next generation takes advantage of cleared, nutrient-rich soil. Evolution is ruthless but creative. Fire is no longer an enemy. It becomes part of life's cycle. For animals, survival is more complicated. Fire spreads so fast that flight or escape is often impossible. Birds in our world can take to the air, but here the skies are already filled with predators and flames rising on updrafts. Insects, though powerful, are caught in firestorms that sweep them away. Reptiles and amphibians adapt by burrowing deep into soil or retreating into water. Mammals, small and vulnerable, dig tunnels and dens to hide from the inferno. Every species develops a fire strategy, those that do not vanish from the earth, and the fires themselves are not ordinary. With 50% oxygen, flames do not simply burn trees, they consume them utterly. Wood does not smolder, it vaporizes. Entire forests can be reduced to ash in hours. The smoke is thicker, darker, choking the skies with soot. The heat is so intense that it creates its own weather. Firestorms rage with winds spiraling around walls of flame. Lightning flashes within the smoke, igniting new blazes miles away. In this world, fire is not an event. It is a climate. Picture walking across a landscape after such a fire. The ground is blackened, trees reduced to skeletal forms, ash drifting like snow. The air still smells sharp with oxygen, but it also carries the bitter tang of smoke. Insects crawl from burrows, their shells scorched. Amphibians emerge from swamps, their skin steaming. Life begins to return quickly, but the scars are everywhere. Here, ecosystems do not age slowly into ancient forests. They are constantly reset by fire, rebuilt again and again. Succession is a sprint, not a marathon. Plants grow fast, animals reproduce quickly, and everything lives in cycles that anticipate the next blaze. This rhythm changes how evolution works. On our Earth, long-lived species like redwoods or tortoises survive because stability allows them time. In a 50% oxygen Earth, stability never comes. Instead, short-lived, fast-reproducing species dominate. Creatures that can recolonize burned land, breed in numbers, and adapt quickly thrive. Giants rise, yes, but they do so on fragile ground. Their reigns are brief, always at risk of ending in the next inferno. For humans, if they exist here, fire is the greatest obstacle. We who built civilization around flame must treat it as the enemy. Villages are not built of wood, but of clay, stone, or damp, fire-resistant materials. Settlements cluster around rivers, lakes, and swamps, where water can be drawn quickly when sparks fly. Entire cultures revolve around fire avoidance. No open flames exist in homes. Cooking is done underground, with steam or with chemical heat sources that do not burn. Fire, once our ally, becomes taboo. To light it openly is to invite death. Yet humans are also ingenious. They might turn fire's predictability into advantage. Just as some plants wait for flames to germinate, humans may learn to use burned landscapes for farming. After a blaze, the soil is rich with nutrients. Fields of crops could be planted quickly, harvested before the next fire cycle. A civilization here would rise and fall with the rhythm of fire, its calendar built on seasons of flame. But even with ingenuity, fire keeps the world unstable. Empires cannot last if their cities burn every generation. Architecture must be temporary, knowledge portable, lives resilient. Civilizations may never build great monuments of wood or stone. Instead, they build systems of memory, traditions, and networks of survival. Permanence belongs not to structures, but to culture. Fires also affect the air itself. With so much oxygen, burning releases vast amounts of carbon dioxide. Cycles of fire could drive wild climate swings. Intense warming after great burns, cooling as ash clouds block sunlight. Ecosystems shift rapidly, forcing species to migrate or perish. Evolution here is not gentle. It is brutal, constant, and shaped by flames. Now imagine standing in the middle of such a firestorm. The sky is orange-black, filled with embers. Winds howl, carrying sparks that leap across rivers. Around you, animals flee, insects buzzing frantically, reptiles diving into mud, mammals burrowing into soil. The heat is overwhelming, the flames unstoppable. In this moment, you understand the truth of a 50% oxygen Earth. The planet itself is alive with fire, and every creature is forced to adapt or die. And yet, from this destruction comes renewal. Ash fertilizes soil, seeds sprout in blackened ground. New generations of animals emerge, smaller, faster, adapted to the new world. Life never stops. It bends, burns, and rises again. The burning earth is harsh, but it is not barren. It is a world of cycles, destruction feeding creation, flame birthing life. For us, it is a reminder. Fire, which we treat as a tool, is also a teacher. It shows us that balance is fragile, that too much oxygen turns a gift into a threat. And it asks a question: could we in such a world learn to live without the flame we depend on? Or would we fade, outcompeted by creatures that never tried to master fire in the first place? Chapter 8: Forests of Flame and Water. When oxygen rises, plants cannot remain the same. They are the silent architects of our world, turning sunlight into food, shaping climates, building the very air we breathe on our earth. Forests stretch across continents, often living for centuries before fire or storm tears them down. But in a 50% oxygen world, forests live in a constant dialogue with flame. They do not grow as they do here. They grow knowing that fire will come, not someday, but soon. Picture a vast woodland in this world. At first glance, it looks lush and alive, a canopy of green and gold under the heavy oxygen sky. But look closer, and you see the differences. Trees are spaced farther apart, their trunks swollen with water, their bark thick and layered like armor. Their leaves are small, waxy, sometimes metallic in sheen, reducing the chance of ignition. Beneath them, the forest floor is damp, littered not with dry leaves but with spongy mosses and shallow pools. This is not an accident. It is designed by evolution. In a world where a spark can ignite an inferno, every plant is either resistant to flame or gone. Some plants take a different path. They embrace fire, weaving it into their survival. Seeds that will not sprout until scorched by heat. Cones that only open when flames lick them. Roots that lie dormant under the soil, ready to send up shoots after the surface burns away. Entire species time their lives to the rhythm of firestorms, ensuring that when destruction comes, they are the first to return. For them, fire is not an enemy. It is midwife to the next generation. Swamps and wetlands expand under these conditions too. Water is the only true shield against oxygen-fed fire. Vast tracts of land become marshes, bogs, and deltas. Trees grow with roots submerged, their trunks rising from the water like pillars. These swamp forests are crowded, damp, and rich with life. Amphibians thrive here, safe from flames. Mammals and reptiles carve niches along their edges. Even insects, though they dominate the skies, come here to breed. Knowing the waters protect their young, the contrast is striking. Forests of flame on high ground, where everything grows quickly, burns quickly, and dies quickly. And forests of water in lowlands, where fire cannot reach, and life endures for longer stretches. This duality defines the entire planet. Landscapes alternate between fiery growth and wet sanctuaries, each shaping evolution in its own way. In fire forests, speed is everything. Plants sprout fast, grow tall in years instead of decades, scatter seeds widely, then perish in the next inferno. Their lifespans are brief, their strategies aggressive. They dominate quickly, but never hold the land for long. The animals here are equally transient, herbivores that graze swiftly, predators that move constantly, species that thrive in bursts before fire resets the stage. Life here is not about permanence, it is about seizing the moment. In swamp forests, patience reigns. Trees grow slowly, their roots interwoven into mats that resist currents. Their leaves are broad, shading pools rich with algae and fish. Fires rage nearby but cannot cross the waters. Here, animals find refuge. Mammals breed in the safety of damp burrows. Reptiles bask on half-submerged logs. Insects cluster in humid air. These forests become the reservoirs of stability, the refuges where life can last long enough to diversify. Humans, if they exist here, would gravitate to the swamps. Fire makes open forests dangerous, but wetlands offer protection. Settlements could be built on stilts, woven from reeds and bark that resists flame. Crops might grow in floating beds, fed by rich mud and constant water. Civilization, in this oxygen world, might not rise in dry plains or fertile valleys, but in the margins where fire cannot reach. Imagine cities of water and wood, canals instead of streets, fields anchored in ponds instead of soil, a Venice not of stone, but of reeds and clay, scattered across every continent. But even in swamps, oxygen leaves its mark. Plants grow thicker, their tissues tougher, their defenses stronger. Many are poisonous, laced with compounds that resist both flame and herbivores. Animals that eat them must evolve detoxifying systems, livers and guts more advanced than ours. For humans, agriculture is harder. Crops are bitter, dangerous, resistant to taming. Farming becomes an art of selection, generation after generation coaxing plants into edible forms. Progress is slow, always battling the stubbornness of evolution in a fire-driven world. And yet, the beauty of these landscapes is undeniable. Imagine a swamp forest at dawn, the air heavy and shining with mist. Towering trees rise from still waters, their roots twisting together like sculptures. Giant dragonflies hover, wings catching the light. Amphibians croak from hidden pools, their voices deep and resonant. The air smells of wet soil, of life reborn after fire. In these places, the fragility of oxygen's gift is hidden by the richness it also allows. Still, fire is never far. Beyond the wetlands, on higher ground, plumes of smoke rise daily. Forests ignite, flames racing through them, animals fleeing in waves. The contrast between flame and water defines not only ecosystems but the entire psychology of life here. Species evolve knowing that stability is fleeting, that refuge is precious, that survival depends on moving between the two. Fire teaches urgency, water teaches patience. Together they shape a planet unlike our own. In our world, forests age gracefully. They pass from young saplings to towering elders, centuries in the making. In this world, forests age in cycles of days, months, or at most decades. Each generation of trees is temporary, each ecosystem reset by oxygen's hunger. And yet, the swamps whisper a different story of places that endure, where time stretches a little longer, where fire cannot erase everything. Perhaps these are the cradles of long-term evolution, the seeds of civilizations that one day emerge from fragility. So what do forests of flame and water tell us? That oxygen shapes not only animals but landscapes. That fire, given too much fuel, remakes the earth into a place of cycles, not permanence. That life, ever adaptable, bends to both destruction and refuge, finding ways to survive in extremes. And for us, they remind us of the balance we live in. Our forests are stable because our air is balanced. Our civilizations stand because fire is rare enough to be mastered. In a different world with different air, The forests themselves would rise and fall in rhythm with flames, and humanity, if it lived at all, would build its life not around mastery of fire, but around its constant avoidance. Chapter 9. Fireproof skins and strange defenses. In a world ruled by oxygen and fire, survival demands creativity. Evolution becomes an artist of strange designs, painting the bodies of animals with defenses that would look impossible on our Earth. Here, life is shaped not only by predators and prey, but by flames themselves. Fire burns through every ecosystem, and oxygen corrodes every cell. To endure, creatures must carry their protection on their very skin. Think first of insects, those titans of this oxygen-rich world. Their chitinous shells, already tough, grow even stranger. Many evolve fireproof coatings, thick waxy layers that resist ignition, or scales that reflect heat. Some beetles, black and gleaming, carry shells that shine like obsidian. Their surface is smooth and heat-resistant. When flames sweep the forest, they huddle in groups, their shells locking together into walls that the fire passes over. Others take a different route. Their shells are filled with tiny air pockets that insulate them, keeping their bodies safe as the world burns around them. Dragonflies, too, adapt. Their wings, once fragile and delicate, evolve new layers, transparent membranes reinforced with heat-resistant proteins. In flight, they glitter like glass, shimmering even in the heat of firestorms. Some species even learn to fly into the updrafts of fire itself, using the rising heat to glide high above danger, waiting until the inferno below has passed. What seems suicidal to us is survival to them. Fire is not avoided but harnessed. Reptiles respond in their own ways. Their scales, already armor against the world, thicken into fire-resistant shields. Imagine a lizard the size of a horse, its skin layered with scales as tough as ceramic, gleaming under the sun. When flames come, it crouches low, its body absorbing heat without burning. Snakes, too, evolve strange defenses. Some grow scales coated with reflective crystals, scattering heat. Others burrow quickly, their skins resistant to abrasion, so they can dive into soil or ash without injury. Venom, once a weapon, now doubles as defense. Toxins that slow cellular damage, keeping oxygen from burning tissues too quickly. Amphibians, creatures of water and land, evolve in still more remarkable directions. Their skins, normally thin and moist, become coated with secretions that resist both dehydration and heat. Imagine a frog the size of a dog, its skin glistening with a slick, oily layer that repels flame like water rolling off wax. Some amphibians take advantage of fire directly. They bury themselves in mud before flames arrive, then emerge to feast on the weakened insects and reptiles that did not adapt as well. Fire, for them, becomes a hunting strategy. But mammals, small, fragile, already struggling in this world, show some of the most unusual changes. Fur, flammable in our Earth, evolves into thicker, more fire-resistant strands. It becomes coarse, almost hair-like fibers coated with oils that resist ignition. Some mammals even lose fur entirely, replacing it with leathery skin that can withstand sparks. Imagine a creature shaped like a fox, but bald, its skin dark and shiny, its body toughened against flame. Others take another path, underground living. Their skins grow resistant to soil abrasion, their claws lengthen, and they spend much of their lives in tunnels, safe from fire above. For them, the surface is only a temporary hunting ground, not a home. Humans in this world would also adapt biologically. If given enough generations, our skin might darken, thickening into leathery layers that resist both fire and oxygen's slow corrosion. Our lungs could develop specialized linings that filter out smoke particles. Even our blood might change, carrying antioxidants so strong that they neutralize oxygen's damage before it ages us. We would not be the same species. We would be born with armor against the very air that fuels us. Yet defenses in this world are not only physical. Behaviors evolve as defenses too. animals learn to predict fire, to sense it long before flames arrive. Some insects detect the faintest change in temperature or the smell of distant smoke, fleeing in swarms before humans would even notice. Reptiles gather in groups at rivers, waiting out firestorms together. Amphibians retreat to swamps, timing their reproduction to coincide with the regrowth that follows fire. Even mammals, clever but small, build societies around fire avoidance, their defenses not only in bodies but in cooperation. Stranger still are the creatures that exploit fire actively. Some insects evolve to lay eggs only in burned soil, where predators are scarce and nutrients are rich. Certain reptiles develop hunting tactics that use fire, chasing prey into burning areas where escape is impossible. Oxygen fuels not just life, but strategies of survival and dominance. Fire, once an enemy, becomes a tool for the most daring. The result is a planet where bodies look nothing like ours. Beetles gleam like black glass. Dragonflies glitter like sheets of crystal. Lizards shimmer with mirrored scales. Amphibians glisten with oils that repel flame. Mammals are bald, armored, and swift. Humans, if they live at all, are leather-skinned and wary-eyed, their bodies adapted against the very world they walk. It is a landscape of strange defenses, each one born from necessity, each one sculpted by fire and oxygen. Picture walking through such a place. The ground is blackened from a recent fire, but already plants sprout, fast-growing shoots pushing through ash. A massive beetle clambers across charred wood, its shell glossy and untouched. A reptile watches from a distance, its scales reflecting sunlight like polished metal. In the swamp, amphibians stir, their skins gleaming as they surface. And overhead, dragonflies wheel in the sky, their wings shimmering like molten glass in the sun. The world feels alien, yet it is only Earth rewritten by oxygen. What does this tell us? That survival in extremes does not mean avoiding danger. It means weaving it into your very skin. Fire cannot be stopped in this world, so life carries its shield always. Oxygen cannot be tamed, so bodies build constant defenses. Every creature, from insect to human, becomes a paradox. Fragile in essence, yet armored against fragility. And for us there is a lesson too. Our earth feels safe because our air is balanced. We can breathe without fear that it will age us in days or set our homes alight in moments. But that balance is delicate. Push it too far, and our world too would demand strange defenses. We are lucky that we live in the sweet spot, where fire is rare enough to be useful, and oxygen plentiful enough to sustain us without consuming us. In a 50% oxygen Earth, life survives, yes, but always scarred, always armored, always strange. Chapter 10. Civilizations in Fire. Civilization in our world was born beside fire. We gathered around it for warmth, used it to cook food, forged metal with it, and built cities that glowed at night with its light. Fire was not only survival, it was culture. It gave us security against predators, opened the door to technology, and eventually powered the engines of industry. Without it, we would not be who we are. But in a world with 50% oxygen, fire cannot be mastered. It cannot be domesticated. It is too powerful, too dangerous, too quick to slip from control. A single spark here is not a tool. It is a catastrophe. To live in such a world is to live in constant caution, building civilizations not with fire as ally, but with fire as enemy. Imagine the first humans here, taller, stronger, yet shorter-lived. Because of oxygen's corrosive cost, they huddle not around flames, but in the cool damp of swamps and riversides. Their shelters are not wood, easily consumed by sparks, but clay, mud, and woven reeds soaked in water. Their cooking is not done with open flame but by steaming food in pits, using heated stones or geothermal vents. The hearth, symbol of our own households, is absent. In its place, the water pot or steam pit becomes the center of family life. Villages form in the safest places, swamps, river deltas, marshes where fire cannot cross. Houses stand on stilts above water, clustered together like islands. Around them stretch wet fields where crops grow on floating beds, anchored by ropes and reeds. These are not sprawling cities of stone and mortar, but networks of fire-resistant habitats, fragile against predators, but safe from fire. The architecture is practical. Walls coated in clay, roofs layered with damp moss, canals dug around perimeters to serve as fire breaks. The constant goal is not beauty or grandeur, but survival. And yet, even here, fire intrudes. Smoke rises from nearby forests almost daily. Winds shift, carrying embers across rivers. Villages live with the awareness that disaster can strike at any moment. Civilization here develops rituals of vigilance. Watchtowers are built not to spot enemies, but to scan the horizon for smoke. Children are taught early not to play with sparks or stones that might strike together. Fire is not worshipped as a god of power, as it was in our myths, but feared as a demon always lurking. Technology, too, changes under this rule. Metallurgy, the foundation of our own civilizations, is nearly impossible. Smelting requires controlled fire, a contradiction in this world. Metals, if used at all, are scavenged for meteorites or hammered cold into shape when found. Stone tools persist longer, sharpened endlessly, handed down from generation to generation. Instead of forging iron swords, people carve obsidian blades or weave weapons from hardened plant fibers. The Bronze Age, the Iron Age, these milestones of our history may never arrive. This civilization is not one of metals, but of earth, wood, bone, and living matter. But human creativity does not end. Without fire, new paths open. Perhaps chemistry advances sooner. Humans here learn to mix plants, minerals, and soils to produce reactions that generate heat without flame. Steaming pits, fermenting vats, and chemical brews become their technology. Instead of furnaces, they use hot springs or volcanic vents, harnessing Earth's natural heat. Geothermal energy, in our world a late discovery, might become one of the first forms of power here. Agriculture is also shaped by fire. On our Earth, humans sometimes burn fields deliberately, clearing land and fertilizing soil with ash. In a 50% oxygen world, that is unthinkable. The fire would spread beyond control. Instead, farming relies on wetlands, floating gardens, or swamps, where soil is enriched naturally. The crops themselves are different. Tough, fire-resistant plants bred over generations to resist sparks and embers. Fields are ringed with canals, the water both feeding plants and serving as defense. Farming becomes a practice not of dominance, but of cooperation with landscapes that resist fire. Trade and travel reflect this too. Roads through dry forests are too dangerous. One stray fire could wipe out caravans. Instead, rivers and lakes become the arteries of civilization. Boats, rafts, and canoes carry goods where paths cannot. Cities rise along waterways, their lifelines always tied to water. Cultures here are aquatic in nature, their metaphors drawn not from flame but from rivers and tides. Civilization grows not in deserts or plains, but in wetlands, where life is always a negotiation with water and fire. Social structures adapt in equally profound ways. In our history, elders were the keepers of wisdom, their long lives repositories of knowledge. But here, lifespans are shorter. Oxygen burns bodies quickly, aging them before their time. Elders are rare, and knowledge cannot be hoarded by individuals. Instead, wisdom is shared communally. Children learn early, carrying responsibilities by adolescence. Oral traditions are strong, with chants, songs, and rituals repeated endlessly to preserve what might otherwise be lost. Storytelling is not art alone. It is survival. Spiritual life evolves under these pressures as well. On our Earth, fire often appears in myths as a gift or punishment. Here, fire is too dangerous to romanticize. It becomes the great destroyer, feared and appeased. Water instead becomes sacred, the element of safety, the shield against flames. Rivers are honored, swamps revered, rain prayed for. Entire religious traditions may grow around the cycles of burning and renewal, with firestorms seen as trials and regrowth as blessings. Where we built temples with torches and candles, they would build shrines beside streams, their rituals drenched in water. But not all is fear. Civilizations here also find resilience. They learn to use fire's rhythm to their advantage. After a blaze, when the land is cleared and fertile, they plant crops quickly, harvesting before the next fire season. Hunters follow fire's path, knowing prey will gather at the edge of new growth. Fire, though enemy, also becomes opportunity. Cultures adapt not by mastering flame, but by weaving it into their calendar, their economy, their way of life. Picture such a city. It is dawn. The mist hangs heavy over a wetland settlement. Houses on stilts rise above water, their walls coated with clay, their roofs alive with moss. Boats are tied along canals, ready for travel. Around the city, floating gardens stretch outward, anchored by ropes, growing plants that gleam with moisture. Beyond, the forest smolders from last night's fire, smoke curling into the sky. Children chant lessons in unison, repeating words until they know them by heart. Adults move through fields, cautious, watchful. The city feels fragile, but also alive, balanced on the edge of danger. This is civilization in fire, cautious, inventive, communal, shaped by a world where air itself is both gift and threat. These humans do not build empires of stone. They do not forge iron or sail across oceans with burning torches, but they endure, adapting with resilience to a planet that never gives them mastery. Their story is not one of conquest, but of survival and balance. And in that balance, there is a strange kind of wisdom. Our Earth gave us the illusion that we could control fire, that we could bend it to our will. In truth, even here, it has escaped us many times, in wildfires, in explosions, in destruction. In a 50% oxygen world, that illusion never begins. Fire is never ours. Civilization grows not by mastering it, but by respecting it. Perhaps in the end, that makes them wiser than us. Chapter 11. Technology without sparks. Technology is often thought of as a story of progress. Fire to stone, stone to bronze, bronze to iron, and onward into the age of electricity and machines. But in a 50% oxygen world, that ladder does not stand. Fire, the very first rung, is gone. Humans cannot hold it, cannot tame it, cannot build with it. And so technology follows another path entirely. A world of invention without sparks. Imagine living in such a place. The instinct we take for granted, striking stones to kindle flame, holding torches in the dark, cooking over embers, is absent. A spark here is not light. It is death. Fires leap too quickly, burning homes, forests, and fields. Civilizations here are forced to innovate along lines unfamiliar to us. Their technologies are not fiery but fluid, not about combustion, but about pressure, fermentation, and growth. The first challenge is light. In our world, torches and lamps extended our waking hours. They allowed us to work at night, to gather in caves, to chase away predators. Here, those tools are impossible. No open flames flicker in the darkness. Instead, light must come from other sources. Perhaps humans domesticate bioluminescent organisms, fireflies bred to glow brighter, fungi that illuminate caves, even fish raised in jars of water, their shimmering bodies casting faint light. Cities glow not with flames, but with living lanterns, their walls painted with glowing moss. The night is not orange, but green, blue, and silver. Cooking, too, changes. Fire allowed us to soften food, to release nutrients, to make plants and meats safe to eat. Without it, humans turned to other methods, boiling with geothermal heat, steaming food in clay pits lined with hot stones, fermenting plants into digestible forms. These become the culinary arts, Entire cuisines evolve around chemical transformations. Fermentation, in our world, the technique for preservation, here becomes the foundation of diet. Flavor is less important than safety and nutrition. Every meal is a quiet act of chemistry. Metallurgy, the heart of our own technological revolutions, is nearly impossible. Smelting requires furnaces, flames controlled at high temperatures. But in this oxygen-heavy Earth, furnaces do not exist. Instead, humans turn to what the planet gives them directly. Meteorites, volcanic flows, and naturally exposed veins of soft metals, like copper and gold, provide raw material. These are not forged, but hammered cold, shaped with stone and bone tools. The Iron Age never dawns. Stone remains primary, sharpened to a fine edge, paired with wood, bone, or hardened fibers. Weapons are not swords, but obsidian blades, spears tipped with volcanic glass, clubs bound with resin and stone shards. Yet limitation sparks creativity. Without fire, other forms of energy come earlier. Water becomes a natural ally. Rivers and streams, already central to settlement, are harnessed with wheels and paddles, not for generating electricity, at least not at first, but for grinding grain, pressing fibers, and pumping water. Wind follows too, with sails stretched across boats and towers, capturing air to drive machines. Energy is not burned but borrowed, flowing through nature's currents. Geothermal heat also plays a larger role. In our world, hot springs are curiosities. Here they are power plants. Settlements cluster near geothermal vents. Their heat used for cooking, bathing, even early industrial processes. Entire civilizations may rise around volcanic regions, not for their soil as in our history, but for their heat. Steam, harnessed through clay pipes and wooden valves, becomes the first form of mechanical power. Imagine a society where steam technology develops before metallurgy, where engines of clay and stone sputter along aqueducts, moving goods and grinding mills centuries before iron is shaped. Chemistry evolves faster as well. With fire too dangerous, humans turn to mixtures, brews, and reactions. Plants are combined into resins, pastes, and adhesives. Minerals are crushed and leached into solutions that preserve food or cure disease. Gunpowder, in our world born of fire, may never appear, but other chemical tools, acids, alkalis, reactive compounds, emerge as substitutes for flame. Technology becomes less about combustion and more about transformation. The alchemist, not the blacksmith, becomes the symbol of invention. Architecture reflects these differences too. Buildings are not carved from timber, always at risk of flame, but from clay, mud, and stone. Roofs are layered with wet moss or thatched with water-soaked reeds. Walls are painted with fire-resistant plaster made from minerals. Some structures are even living, grown from fireproof plants coaxed into desired shapes, hardened over time into natural frameworks. Where we built skyscrapers of steel and glass, they build forests of grown wood, hardened by sap and water. Buildings that live, breathe, and resist fire in their very structure. Transport changes as well. On our Earth, the wheel carried goods across plains, but fires along dry roads made long land journeys perilous here. Instead, boats dominate. Rivers are highways, lakes are marketplaces, oceans are connections between civilizations. Sail technology advances quickly, harnessing wind as the safest and most abundant power source. Cities grow along coasts and rivers, each one tied to water as both lifeline and protection. Roads exist, but they are always cut with canals and ditches, breaks against fire's path. Even warfare reflects the absence of sparks. No flaming arrows, no firebombs, no cannons. Armies cannot rely on the terror of flame. Instead, they wield stone, bone, and chemistry. Obsidian blades clash with hardened wooden shields. Blowpipes carry poisons extracted from amphibians. Nets woven from fireproof fibers entangle reptilian predators or enemy warriors. Battles are fought quietly, brutally, without the spectacle of fire. Victory belongs to cunning, not conflagration. And yet as time passes, civilizations here might still reach an age of electricity. Without fire, they cannot burn coal or oil, but they can harness water, wind, and geothermal steam. Wires of hammered copper, though rare, carry current. Batteries invented through chemical experiments store power. Lights glow not with flame, but with phosphorescent minerals or primitive electric bulbs. A world without sparks still finds its way to energy, but through paths that diverge from our own. Picture walking into one of these cities at night. The air is damp, heavy with oxygen. The streets are canals, boats gliding silently between homes raised on stilts. Buildings glow faintly with bioluminescent moss, casting green light across the water. In the distance, a mill wheel turns slowly in the current, grinding grain. On the horizon, a column of smoke rises from a firestorm in the forest. But the city is safe, its canals wide and its walls damp. There is no firelight, no torches, no chimneys. Instead, the glow of life itself lights the way. This is technology without sparks, slower in some ways, faster in others. It is fragile yet inventive, humble yet resilient. It reminds us that invention does not follow one path. It is not inevitable that fire must lead to metal, or that metal must lead to machines. In another world, with another atmosphere, technology grows differently. It does not burn, it flows, and perhaps in its own way it is wiser. For where we built civilizations on fire and risked destroying ourselves with it, they build theirs on water and air, always cautious, always aware that the true power belongs not to them, but to the world around them. Their technology is not conquest, but adaptation, not domination, but survival. And in that, there is a lesson that invention, at its heart, is not about control, but about learning to live with the forces that shape us. Chapter 12, Warfare and Oxygen. War has always been shaped by the elements around us. On our Earth, fire was one of the first weapons. We threw burning branches at enemies, set arrows alight, and later discovered gunpowder, cannons, and bombs. Much of human conflict has been built on the ability to wield flame, but in a world where the air holds 50% oxygen, fire is not a weapon, it is uncontrollable. A spark does not stay in a torch or a hearth. It leaps, it roars, it consumes everything. To ignite fire here is not to strike fear into an enemy, but to invite destruction on yourself. And so warfare, if it rises in such a world, must follow very different rules. Weapons are made, not from sparks, but from stone, bone, and living matter. Obsidian becomes more valuable than gold, its edges sharper than steel. Spears tipped with volcanic glass, clubs wrapped in hardened fibers, nets woven from fireproof reeds, all become the tools of armies. Without metallurgy, armor is not forged in furnaces but taken from nature. Scales of reptiles, shells of beetles, layers of plant fiber hardened with sap become breastplates and shields. Soldiers march into battle, looking less like the warriors we know and more like hybrids of the creatures they hunt. Draped in the borrowed defenses of the giants that share their world, poison becomes the great equalizer. Amphibians in this oxygen-saturated earth secrete toxins powerful enough to paralyze or kill in an instant. Plants produce venoms bitter enough to fell the strongest predator. Humans, ever observant, learn to harness these weapons. Darts dipped in frog poison, blades smeared with plant toxins, traps laced with venom, replace the fire arrows and gunpowder of our history. A warrior's deadliest strike is not one of force, but of chemistry. Battles are fought in silence, a single cut or dart deciding the outcome hours later when poison takes its toll. The terrain itself becomes part of strategy. Battles are not waged in dry forests or open plains, for there a single accident could ignite a firestorm that swallows both armies. Instead, war shifts to wetlands, river valleys, and marshes, where water holds flames back. Soldiers fight with their feet in mud, their boats pulled up along canals, their camps built near streams. Smoke on the horizon is not a sign of victory, but of terror, for no one controls a blaze in this world. Armies march with vigilance, always scanning for embers on the wind. In such a place, war is cautious. It is slower, quieter, less about spectacle, and more about patience. Ambushes are preferred to open clashes. Guerrilla tactics dominate. Armies use the environment not just as backdrop, but as weapon. Swarms of insects can be disturbed and driven into enemy lines. Giant amphibians can be corralled and released into rivers to disrupt crossings. Crocodile-like reptiles can be lured toward encampments with bait. Nature itself becomes part of the arsenal, unpredictable, and often more dangerous than the soldiers themselves. Without firepower, battles are fought at closer range, with more intimacy. There are no cannons booming from a distance, no explosives flattening fortresses. There is the quiet flight of a poisoned dart, the sharp clash of obsidian against shell, the thud of a net falling over an enemy. Death is slower, more personal. The fear of battle is not in the roar of gunfire, but in the knowledge that you may already be poisoned, that your body may betray you, hours after the fighting ends. Siege warfare, too, takes another shape. Cities are not burned, for that would be impossible. Instead, they are starved or drowned. Armies cut off water supplies, divert rivers, or build canals to flood settlements. Walls are not toppled with fire, but undermined with earthworks, or climbed with ladders. Fortresses are built not on dry hills, but in swamps. Their defense is as much biological as architectural. Attackers must contend not only with walls and warriors, but with disease, insects, and amphibians that thrive in the wet. A siege here is as much a struggle against the environment as against the defenders. The psychology of warfare is different as well. On our Earth, fire was an expression of power, a weapon of terror that could break morale. Here, fire is everyone's fear. It is a common threat, a disaster that destroys victor and vanquished alike. Armies are shaped by this fear. They march not with pride in their flames, but with caution, with respect for the landscape, with dread of the element they cannot wield. Heroes are not those who light the first torch, but those who protect their people from fire, who lead them through safe terrain, who preserve life against the world's volatility. Culture reflects this shift. Where our myths celebrated fire as divine, theirs would treat it as curse. Where our warriors carried flaming banners, theirs carry cloaks of shells and reeds. Where we sang of burning cities, they sing of rivers defended and floods unleashed. The symbols of power are not torches or crowns of forged gold, but ornaments of beetle carapace, cloaks woven from fireproof fibers, tokens of survival rather than conquest. Even without fire, the drive to innovate continues. Chemistry, not combustion, may eventually create weapons as destructive as ours. Mixtures of minerals could release choking gases. Pressure flasks could explode without flame. Liquids and vapors might replace fire as tools of terror. Yet these inventions would come with the same risk. In a world already fragile, every new weapon threatens not only the enemy, but the wielder. Technology of war advances, but always under the shadow of an environment that refuses to be controlled. Imagine such a battlefield, a wide marsh, the air thick with oxygen, the ground soft with mud. Two armies face each other across the reeds. They move quietly, their armor made of beetle shells, their spears tipped with glassy obsidian. Insects hover overhead, disturbed by the tension, their wings buzzing like distant drums. The first blow is not fire, but a whisper, a dart flying silently through the air, dipping in venom. The clash is sudden, close, bodies locked together, nets tangling limbs, blades flashing briefly before the struggle folds into mud. There is no roar of cannons, no glow of flame, only the cries of men, the splash of water, the silence that follows when one side breaks. This is war in a world of 50% oxygen. It is quieter, slower, more intimate. It does not burn with spectacle, but it bleeds with precision. It is shaped not by fire, but by the constant avoidance of it, by the harnessing of life and landscape instead. It is no less brutal, perhaps in some ways, it is more so. Chapter 13. Oceans as Safe Havens. When land is ruled by flame and predators, when forests ignite in moments and swamps grow heavy with giants, when the ocean calls as refuge, it always has. On our earth, the sea gave life its first home, and even now it is the place where stability lingers longest. In a world with 50% oxygen, that role becomes more important than ever. The seas are not free of danger, but they offer something land never can: safety from fire. Imagine standing at the edge of this world's shoreline. Behind you, the forests smolder, blackened by another wildfire. Ahead, the sea stretches calm and glittering, its surface carrying the same oxygen that reshapes everything else. The air above the waves is heavy, but the water itself is saturated, holding more oxygen than our own oceans ever could. Fish swim with startling speed. Shoals flash like living storms. The water seems alive in ways ours never is. For humans or any mammal-like creatures struggling against the dangers of land, the sea is sanctuary. Fire cannot cross it. Embers die on its surface. Storms may rise, but flames do not follow. Early people build rafts and canoes not just to fish, but to escape. Settlements grow along coasts, their homes balanced between two worlds, the fiery chaos of land and the watery calm of sea. Some go further, building villages on stilts in shallow bays, or floating platforms lashed together with reeds and logs. Their lives become tied to the ocean, their survival dependent on tides. The sea shapes culture here differently than on our earth. Navigation is not an afterthought, but a necessity. Rivers and coastlines are the highways of civilization. Children learn to paddle before they learn to walk. Songs are built around currents, winds, and tides. Knowledge carried in rhythm and verse, so it is not forgotten. Maps are not of mountains and valleys, but of reefs, bays, and estuaries. To live here is to be amphibious in spirit, even if not in body. Food is abundant in these seas. Oxygen fuels massive schools of fish, colossal crabs, squid larger than boats. Algae nets woven from reeds and fibers capture meals in quantities that seem endless. Shellfish cluster in reefs, their shells fireproof and strong, traded as tools and armor. Seaweed grows thick, forming floating forests that can be harvested for food, medicine, even construction. The ocean is not just a refuge from fire, but a provider of everything needed for life. But refuge is never perfect. The same oxygen that fuels abundance also fuels predators. Sharks grow vast, their bodies sleek and tireless, their gills pumping oxygen-rich water with every stroke. Squid rise to the surface, their tentacles curling like serpents, their eyes wide and unblinking. Whales may never appear here, for mammals cannot compete, but reptiles take their place, crocodile-like creatures, evolving into marine hunters that patrol coasts with relentless hunger. The seas are safe from fire, but not from teeth, and so humans adapt again. Boats are built larger, faster, their hulls reinforced with layered reeds and bark that resist bites. Harpoons tipped with obsidian become essential tools, not only for hunting, but for defense. Villages along coasts develop warning systems, drums or horns that signal when shadows move beneath the waves. Life is lived in rhythm with predators, just as it is on land. But here the dangers can be seen coming across open water. The ocean also offers something else: stability. Land is fragile in this oxygen world, its ecosystems reset by constant burning. But the seas, though turbulent, do not ignite. Life here lasts longer. Resets grow for centuries. Swamps of kelp endure through fire cycles. For humans, this means permanence. Villages can remain for generations. Knowledge can accumulate. Agriculture may even begin here, not in fields, but in the sea itself. Seaweed is cultivated on ropes. Fish corralled in shallow lagoons. Shellfish farmed in beds. The first steps of civilization do not rise from plowed earth, but from tended waters. Picture such a place. A village floats on a sheltered bay, its houses built of reeds and clay, its streets replaced by narrow canals. Nets hang drying in the sun, glowing faintly green where bioluminescent algae cling to fibers. Children paddle small boats between homes, learning the currents as play. In the distance, a wall of smoke rises from burning forests, but the village is untouched. The water shields it, and life here goes on. Trade flourishes along these coasts. Rivers carry goods inland. Oceans connect settlements across bays and archipelagos. Canoes laden with dried fish, obsidian blades, and bundles of seaweed glide from one city to another. The sea becomes what fire prevents on land. A bridge, not a barrier. Civilizations rise not as empires of land, but as networks of harbors, strung along the edges of continents, like pearls on a thread. Spiritual life, too, changes under the ocean's influence. On our earth, fire was revered, feared, or worshipped. Here, fire is only feared. It is the destroyer, never the giver. The sea takes fire's place as the divine. Its tides are sacred, its storms warnings, its abundance blessings. Gods of this world are not flame bringers, but wave carriers, guardians of reefs, spirits of rivers. Rituals center on water, offerings cast into waves, prayers spoken to tides, ceremonies held in canoes under moonlight. Where we built altars with flame, they build floating shrines that drift with currents. Even warfare adapts to the ocean. Battles are fought on water, fleets of reed boats clashing in silence. Arrows cannot be set aflame, so nets and harpoons dominate. Victory is not fire-consuming cities, but control of bays and estuaries. To cut off trade is to starve an enemy. To seize a river mouth is to choke a settlement. Wars are fought not to burn, but to blockade, to control the flows of water that sustain life. And through it all, fire remains the shadow behind everything. Villages may thrive along coasts, but every journey inland is a risk. Crops grown on high ground are lost to flames. Roads through forests vanish in firestorms. The sea is safe, but the land is never far away, and it always burns. This contrast shapes the psychology of entire cultures. The land is danger, the sea is safety. People here are not earthbound, but waterbound, building their lives around what cannot burn. So the oceans in this world are more than just ecosystems. They are havens, cultures, bridges, and gods. They are where life stabilizes, where humans find safety, where civilizations bloom in places untouched by fire. They are the lungs of this planet, holding oxygen in forms that do not ignite, offering balance where the land only offers chaos. And yet, even here, safety is never complete. A shadow beneath the waves can still rise, a storm can still destroy, a predator can still strike. But compared to the endless flames of the forests, the sea is merciful. It is the one place where humans can imagine permanence, where cultures can imagine tomorrow. In a world that burns too easily, the oceans become not only havens but hope. Chapter 14. Cycles of Collapse and Renewal. In a world with 50% oxygen, life does not follow the same rhythm as ours. On our Earth, ecosystems often build slowly, forests growing over centuries, reefs accumulating over millennia, species rising and adapting over spans of deep time. Here, the pace is different. It is not the story of slow continuity, but of cycles, of growth, collapse, and renewal, repeating endlessly under the weight of fire and abundance. The air itself ensures this. Too much oxygen means everything burns faster. Not just forests, but the very metabolisms of living creatures. Giants rise quickly because they can. Their muscles powered, their bodies fueled, their lives driven to extremes. But the same air that gives them strength also ensures that their tissues wear down. They age faster, they die younger. Populations boom in sudden surges, filling forests and seas with numbers beyond imagining. And then famine, fire or collapse cuts them down, the cycle begins again. Picture a forest after a firestorm. Blackened trunks rise like pillars, the ground coated in ash, the air thick with smoke. To us, it would seem like devastation, but here it is, simply another stage. Within days, shoots emerge. Small plants sprouting from roots that survived underground. Seeds waiting for heat to crack their shells. Burst open. Insects return first, their bodies adapted to resist flames, crawling over charred wood. Amphibians surface from swamps, their slick skins unscarred. Reptiles creep out of burrows, their scales dulled but intact. Within weeks, the forest is already green again, and within years, giants once more stalk through it. Renewal is swift because collapse is constant. The same cycle happens in the oceans. Predator populations explode when oxygen-rich waters fuel them, but then prey is overhunted. Numbers crash, and the predators starve. Squid rise to dominance, then vanish. Sharks fill the seas, then recede. The abyss blooms with giants, then empties. Always the oxygen drives abundance, and always the abundance drives collapse. There is no equilibrium here, no long balance. Only waves of power, one species rising after another. Always brief, always fragile. For humans, these cycles shape everything. Settlements grow in fertile wetlands, crops thriving in soil enriched by ash. But they too are temporary. Fires sweep too close, predators move in, resources vanish, and communities collapse. People migrate, carrying what knowledge they can, settling again in new places. Civilizations are not continuous empires, but shifting patterns, scattered like sparks, rising and falling with the rhythm of the world. Permanence is an illusion. Survival lies in movement. Culturally, this creates a different sense of time. On our Earth, we measure progress in centuries, dynasties, monuments. Here, time is measured in cycles of flame. A generation remembers the last great fire, passes stories to children, warns them of signs in the smoke. Entire histories are framed not as lineages but as loops. The rise of one village, its fall to fire, its rebirth elsewhere. Monuments are not of stone, built to last forever, but of memory, rituals, and stories that persist when places vanish. Knowledge is carried in people, not in buildings. There is a strange resilience in this. Collapse is expected, not feared. Renewal is anticipated, not miraculous. People here do not grieve permanence because they never knew it. They live with the knowledge that their world is unstable, and they build their lives accordingly. Their philosophy is not one of control, but of acceptance. Where we dream of stability, they dream of flexibility. Where we build for forever, they build for today and tomorrow, knowing that the fire will always return. And yet these cycles are not only destructive, they are also creative. Each collapse clears the way for something new. Forests regenerate with different compositions, favoring plants that adapt fastest. Animal populations shift, allowing new predators or prey to emerge. Even humans adapt, changing diets, technologies, and strategies after each disaster. The world is harsh, but it is also dynamic. It is always alive, always moving, always reshaping itself in ways that prevent stagnation. Picture again a burned plain, the ground still warm, the trees still smoking. From beneath the soil, green shoots push upward, fragile but relentless. Insects gather, feeding on the first growth. Birds, small survivors of the night, return to feed. Within weeks, the blackened land is dotted with color. Life does not wait. It surges into every opening, filling every gap. Renewal is not optional. It is inevitable. The cycles of collapse and renewal also shape belief. Where our earth gave us myths of eternal heavens and timeless gods, theirs are gods of rhythm. Fire is not only a destroyer, but a purifier. Renewal is not luck, but destiny. Entire religions may grow around the idea that nothing lasts, that destruction is as sacred as creation. To burn is not to end, but to begin again. People may celebrate after fires, not mourn, knowing that the land will be fertile, that new life will come. Their rituals are not of permanence, but of cycles, their calendars built around the seasons of flame. In a way, this world is more honest than ours. We pretend permanence exists, in monuments, in cities, in nations, but nothing truly lasts. Time erodes stone, civilizations crumble, species vanish. Our world hides this truth in slow processes. Theirs shows it plainly, in firestorms and famines, in short lives and swift renewals. It teaches them early what we often learn too late, that life is fragile, but that fragility is not weakness. It is the basis of change. For humans here, the lesson is survival not through control, but through acceptance. You cannot stop fire, but you can live knowing it will come. You cannot hold stability, but you can carry knowledge forward when places fall. You cannot build forever, but you can build again. Collapse is never the end, only the beginning of renewal. So the story of this oxygen-rich earth is not one of steady progress. It is one of endless cycles. Giants rise and fall. Forests burn and regrow. Seas bloom and empty. Civilizations scatter and return. Life burns bright, collapses, and returns brighter still. The world itself breathes in this rhythm. Destruction and creation, collapse and renewal, over and over. And if you stand in that world, breathing its heavy air, watching fire consume a forest or smoke rise from the horizon, you do not despair. You know the pattern. You know that life will return. In this world, it always does. Chapter 15. If Earth shifted to 50% oxygen today, it is one thing to imagine a planet that has always carried 50% oxygen, where evolution took its course under those conditions. But it is another to wonder, what would happen if our Earth, the one we know, shifted suddenly into that state? Not over millions of years, not with time for species to adapt, but now, in our present day. The sky is the same, the continents unchanged, but every breath you take is doubled in strength, every spark more dangerous, every cell flooded with oxygen beyond what it can manage. The first thing you would notice is how strange it feels to breathe. The air would be heavier, denser, almost intoxicating. Athletes would run faster, climb higher, push their muscles further than ever before. At first, it would feel like a gift. People who were weak might feel suddenly powerful. Those who struggled for breath would find it easier. Even a casual walk would feel like being supercharged. But this sensation would not last long. Within hours and days, the darker side of oxygen would show. Our bodies designed for 21% cannot handle 50. Cells would be overwhelmed. Free radicals flooding tissues, damaging proteins and DNA. People would age faster, wounds would heal poorly, and lungs would suffer burns simply from the richness of the air. Hospitals would fill not with the sick, but with the newly poisoned by the very air that sustains them. Fires would be the second disaster. A lightning strike, a spark from a power line, a carelessly discarded cigarette. Any of these could ignite infernos larger than anything we know. Forests would not burn in patches. They would vanish in hours. Cities made of concrete and steel would still be vulnerable because so much of our infrastructure depends on plastics, fabrics, and fuels that would ignite like paper in this atmosphere. Wildfires would sweep continents. Firefighting would be nearly impossible. Water dropped from aircraft would evaporate in the heat before it even hit the ground. Smoke would choke skies for months. Our civilization, built on combustion, would suddenly be surrounded by it in uncontrollable forms. Technology itself would falter. Engines designed to burn fuel at carefully balanced ratios would explode under the new conditions. Cars, planes, factories, all machines that rely on combustion would run too hot, ignite uncontrollably, or collapse into fire. Power plants would shut down, their turbines destroyed, their flames impossible to regulate. The electricity grid would fail. plunging societies into darkness at the same moment the world is filled with fire. Humans so reliant on machines powered by sparks would suddenly be surrounded by sparks they could not control. War, too, would change overnight. Weapons built on explosives would be more unstable than ever, detonating with far greater force, sometimes even by accident. Armies would find their stockpiles dangerous to handle. Civilian areas near fuel depots would ignite. And yet, in another sense, the great militaries of the world would be reduced to the same state as ancient tribes. Firepower would lose its meaning when the environment turned every flame into catastrophe. The tools of destruction would destroy both sides alike. Ecology would shift with terrifying speed. Forests and grasslands, adapted to slower rhythms, would collapse under constant fire. Animals would suffocate or starve as their habitats vanished. Oceans would bloom with life at first, as more oxygen dissolved into water. But those blooms would trigger crashes as predator-prey cycles spun out of balance. Whales, dolphins, and fish would be caught in swings of abundance and famine. Insects might rise at first, their bodies capable of seizing the extra oxygen, but their predators would follow, and then fire would burn through their new habitats, wiping them out. Evolution cannot keep up with a change this fast. Extinction would spread across every continent. Humans would try to adapt, because that is what we do. We would retreat to water, building floating settlements offshore, where fire could not cross. We would carve out safe zones in swamps and wetlands, reshaping farmland into canals and terraces that hold water as barriers against flame. Cities would shrink, scattering into smaller, more defensible communities, each one tied to rivers and lakes. Globalization, the web of trade and movement that links us now, would fray, because every long road, every dry plain, every stretch of forest is now a death trap waiting for fire. Humanity would survive, but not in the same way. The modern world would collapse into something smaller, slower, more cautious. Culture would change almost immediately. Our myths and religions, many of which treat fire as sacred or divine, would turn away from it. Fire would no longer symbolize warmth or light, but only destruction. Water would become the center of worship, the element that protects, cools, and preserves. Stories would not celebrate fire-bringers, but water-bearers. People who saved lives by finding springs or guiding communities to rivers. Rituals would move to the sea, where flames cannot follow. Civilizations would become aquatic in spirit, even if not in body, defining themselves by their distance from fire rather than their mastery of it. And then there is the question of knowledge. So much of our science and progress depends on stability. We study the world slowly, building on discoveries that last. But in a world where fires sweep continents every season, stability is gone. Laboratories burn, archives vanish, data centers melt. Knowledge is preserved not in buildings but in people, in songs and oral traditions. Technology does not progress steadily. It staggers, rises, and falls with each firestorm. Entire generations could lose what the last discovered, forced to start again. Civilization in this oxygen world would not be linear. It would be cyclical, like the forests themselves. The emotional weight of such a shift would be profound. Imagine waking each day knowing that the forest outside your city might ignite by evening, that the air keeping you alive is also aging you, that every comfort of modern life could vanish with a single spark. Anxiety would become a permanent condition. Caution would be a way of life. Humans would learn to live not with the illusion of permanence, but with the certainty of collapse. We would either grow resilient or despair, perhaps both. And yet, even here, humans would endure. Some would move into oceans, building floating cities that mimic reefs. Others would tunnel underground, carving shelters away from flame. Agriculture would adapt to swamps and wetlands, growing rice-like crops in endless paddies of water. We would find ways because we always have. The question is not whether we could survive, but what kind of world we would build from the ashes. Perhaps, in the long run, humans would even evolve. Bodies would change under pressure, skins thickening against oxygen's burn, cells developing stronger defenses against free radicals. Lifespans might shorten, but growth would accelerate. Entire cultures might live with the knowledge that 30 years is a long life. Youth would not be wasted, but cherished. Creativity compressed into fewer years, brilliance shining faster before fading. Civilization would not be slower. It might burn brighter, with lives lived in intensity rather than endurance. So if our Earth shifted to 50% oxygen today, the world we know would vanish. Fires would consume cities, ecosystems would collapse, technology would falter, and culture would transform. Humanity would not end, but it would be remade. We would live closer to water, closer to one another, closer to the knowledge that nothing lasts. And perhaps that lesson, harsh as it is, would teach us something we often forget, that our balance is fragile, that our world is rare, and that survival has never been about control, but about adaptation. Chapter 16. Lessons from the oxygen world. When we imagine a world with 50% oxygen, it feels distant, alien, almost like science fiction. We picture giant insects buzzing through ancient forests, amphibians rising from swamps like monsters, reptiles gleaming with mirrored scales, oceans filled with predators the size of ships. We see humans living shorter, faster lives, building fireproof cities in swamps and floating villages on the sea, telling stories by starlight instead of fire. We trace the cycles of collapse and renewal, forests burning and regrowing, civilizations rising and falling, everything caught in the rhythm of air too rich to be stable. And when the vision fades, we return to our own Earth, our 21%, our fragile but balanced atmosphere, and the contrast becomes clear. The oxygen world is not just speculation. It is a mirror showing us the importance of balance and what it means to live within it. The first lesson is that abundance is not always a gift. We often dream of more energy, more strength, more speed. But in this imagined world, more oxygen does not mean a better life. It means tissues burn, lifespans shorten, firestorms rage, ecosystems collapse. Power comes quickly but fades just as fast. What seems like an advantage becomes a danger, and perhaps the same is true in our lives. Excess, unchecked and unbalanced, often destroys the very stability it promises. The oxygen world teaches us that enough is not weakness, it is wisdom. The second lesson is fragility. In that world, everything burns faster, collapses sooner, ends earlier. But fragility is not only destruction, it is also the basis for renewal. Forests do not die permanently. They regrow, species vanish, but others rise. Civilizations collapse, but knowledge moves forward in fragments. The rhythm of life is not permanence, but resilience. In our world, we often pretend that permanence exists, that nations, monuments, even ecosystems will last forever. Yet the truth is closer to the oxygen world. Collapse is part of the cycle. Renewal is too. To live with fragility is not to despair, but to accept that change as the constant. The third lesson is about control. On our Earth, we believe we control fire. We burn forests, light cities, build engines, split atoms. Fire bends to our machines. In the oxygen world, that illusion never begins. Fire is never mastered. It is feared, avoided, respected. People live around it, not with it. They invent technologies of water, fermentation, pressure, and chemistry instead. Their progress follows a different path. One built not on domination of the most dangerous element, but on harmony with what remains safe. And here the mirror reflects something back at us. We may feel powerful with our control over fire and energy, but are we not also trapped by it? The very flames we mastered threaten us now in the form of climate change, burning fuels and rising temperatures. Perhaps we are not so different from those imagined humans who learned early that fire is too dangerous to command. Perhaps we too will need to learn technologies without sparks. The fourth lesson is about time. In the oxygen world, lifespans are shorter. Giants live fast and die young. Humans may not see old age as we know it. Cultures build themselves around youth, around the urgency to pass on knowledge quickly, around the recognition that tomorrow is never guaranteed. In our Earth, we often waste time, assuming it stretches endlessly. We imagine we can always do tomorrow what we postpone today. But maybe we too should live with the urgency of the oxygen world, not because our lives are as short, but because meaning is always compressed into the time we have. Intensity, not duration, is what gives life its shape. The fifth lesson is humility. The oxygen world is a place where humans, even if they exist, are never kings. They are survivors in swamps, sailors on fragile boats, scavengers in burned landscapes. They are clever, yes, inventive, yes, but never dominant. They remain part of the weave, not its master. And perhaps this is the deepest mirror of all. On our Earth, we have risen so high that we believe we stand apart. But we too are part of the weave, dependent on balance, fragile, before forces larger than ourselves. If oxygen reminds us of anything, it is that nature is never fully ours. It allows us a place, but it does not promise us permanence. So the lessons of the oxygen world are not just about air or fire or creatures that never lived. They are about us. They are about balance and excess, fragility and resilience, control and humility, time and urgency. They remind us that the conditions we take for granted, the mix of gases, the rhythms of ecosystems, the stability of climate, are rare, delicate, and precious. They remind us that survival is not about endless growth or domination, but about adaptation, about living within limits rather than pushing past them. Imagine for a final moment, walking in that oxygen-rich world. The forest around you smolders, its trees still glowing with embers from the last fire. Insects the size of hawks wheel overhead, their wings shimmering in the heavy air. A reptile watches from a distance, its mirrored scales catching the light. You step carefully, knowing the ground may hide creatures waiting to strike, knowing the air itself carries both life and danger. You reach the shore and see the ocean stretching vast and calm, the one place where fire cannot reach. You feel small, fragile, and yet alive. Now imagine walking again in our own world. The forests are quieter, the insects small, the reptiles modest. Fires do come, but they do not consume everything. The air feels lighter, easier, perfectly balanced for your lungs. And suddenly you see the difference. You see how rare this balance is, how extraordinary it is to live in a world where oxygen is enough, but not too much, where fire is tool but not master, where civilizations can endure for centuries, not just cycles. You realize that our Earth is not ordinary, it is miraculous. The lesson of the oxygen world is gratitude. Gratitude for balance, gratitude for fragility that does not always collapse, gratitude for time that stretches further than it might have, gratitude that we live not in a world of constant flame, but in one where fire can be tamed, where knowledge can endure, where permanence, though an illusion, lasts long enough for us to believe in it. And perhaps the final lesson is this: we should not wait for collapse to remind us of resilience. We should not wait for abundance to remind us of balance. We should not need the vision of a harsher world to see how extraordinary our own is. But sometimes it takes imagination. Sometimes it takes the thought of an Earth that burns too brightly to make us see the quiet miracle of the one we already have.